In this tutorial, I'm gonna show you how to knit two-color brioche stockinette stitch, and I'm gonna talk about the differences between the two-color brioche rib and two-color brioche stockinette, so that in the end you're gonna be able to use whichever of my videos of two-color brioche patterns and knit them in stockinette stitch. So it's gonna be kind of the same pattern but with a different texture, and it's the stockinette stitch is not reversible. For the stockinette stitch, as for the brioche rib, you have to cast on an odd number of stitches, so this way you're gonna have the symmetry between the sides. And we're gonna start just as usual as the brioche rib with a knit stitch edge for color 1. The first edge stitch is a knit 1. After that is the same, the repeat is the same as for the brioche rib. Slip on yarn over, knit 1, and we repeat this until we have only 2 stitches left on the needle. Slip on yarn over, knit 1. Slip on yarn over means you put the needle under the yarn and then purlwise into the stitch and then slip the stitch and knit 1 as usual. So here I have only 2 stitches left, and we're gonna slip on yarn over and then slip purlwise with yarn in front the last edge stitch. So until now this is the same as for the brioche rib. Now we're adding the second color yarn, put together the tails. And so the difference between the rib and the stockinette is the order of the brioche knit and brioche purl. So for the brioche rib we did brioche knit. Well, this is like a setup row, but usually in row number 5, like I always say, we did brioche knit. Then we repeated those rows 2, 3, and 4 that are brioche purl, then brioche knit. And with the stockinette is a little bit different. We have brioche knit for both yarns on the right side, and then when we turn the work we brioche purl with both yarns on that wrong side. So I'm gonna show you, maybe you'll get it better. So slip purlwise the edge stitch, and then we start, and usually we had to start with a brioche purl. Instead, in stockinette we're gonna start with a brioche knit. Slip on yarn over, and that's gonna be the repeat for this row number 2. Brioche knit, slip on yarn over, brioche knit, slip on yarn over, and repeat that until you have only 2 stitches left on the left needle. The last 2 stitches, because the stitch and the yarn over in brioche counts as 1 stitch, so we brioche knit again and then slip the stitch purlwise with yarn in the back. So here's another difference. When we did the brioche rib, in row number 2, when we knitted in color 2, we slipped the stitch, the last edge stitch, with yarn in front, and in row number 4 with yarn in back. And with the stockinette it's gonna be the contrary. In the row number 2 it's gonna be purl-wise with yarn in the back, and in row number 4 it's gonna be with yarn in front. But the rule that I told you, that if you knit in this row and the yarn is in the back, so for the edge stitch it stays in the back, and if you purl and the yarn is in front, it stays in front for the edge stitch. So for the stockinette this rule applies, but it's gonna be different because we are knitting in row number 2 and we're purling in row number 4. I hope it's not too confusing, but well, it's like this. In this row number 2, it's slip-on purl-wise with yarn in the back. So now we can turn the work. Pick up the first color yarn, and we're gonna knit row number 3. The first edge stitch in color 1 is always knit 1, that doesn't change. And we start the repeat, and it's gonna be slip-on yarn over, brioche purl. Brioche purl means you purl together the stitch and the yarn over. So slip-on yarn over, brioche purl, slip-on yarn over, brioche purl. And repeat until we have only 2 stitches left on the needle. Slip-on yarn over, brioche purl. And the symmetry stitch is gonna be slip-on yarn over, and the last edge stitch slip-on purl-wise with yarn in front as usual. So now we slide the stitches to the other end, pick up the second color yarn, and we start. Slip the first edge stitch purl-wise and start the repeat, and it's gonna be brioche purl, slip-on yarn over. So if you followed my other videos, and you can remember the order of these repeats, for the brioche rib we had to do brioche knit stitch in this row. Instead, here in the stockinette stitch we're doing brioche purl. So as I told you, we're purling in this row, so the yarn is in front, and we leave it in front when we slip the last edge stitch. So that's the rows 1 to 4, and as I usually say, row number 5 is the first pattern row. If you are doing just stockinette stitch in columns with no pattern, we're gonna just slip-on yarn over and brioche knit with no increases or decreases. So I'm gonna do another round of repeats. So we're knitting row number 5, and it's only brioche knit, slip-on yarn over, slip the last edge stitch, and then as usual, after row number 5, after the first pattern row, we have to repeat rows 2, 3, and 4. So here comes the secret how you can use any of my videos to knit the same pattern but in stockinette stitch. After each pattern row, you repeat these 2, 3, and 4 rows. So not the ones that I show in the video. So in the video, in row number 2 I would purl, then in row number 3 purl, purl, and then in row number 4 I would brioche knit. but in stockinette stitch we are in row number 2. I'm gonna show it again. Instead of brioche purl, we're gonna just brioche knit. Then in row number 3 we're gonna brioche purl, and in row number 4 we're gonna brioche purl, just like we did the first time that I showed you these rows. So and then you can use the instructions for the pattern. The rows that I show you, those don't change. So the row number 5, 9, 13 and so on remains the same as I showed them in the video. Just you just have to change those rows 2, 3 and 4 that we need in between the pattern rows. So you can see already that on the wrong side we don't have the same pattern, kind of like when we do brioche rib pattern. The stockinette is only one side. So that was row number 3 and we were purling, and row number 4 and we're gonna purl again, brioche purl. So I hope you understand. I don't know if it's easier to remember, but for me it's kind of is. It's logical. Is if you are knitting on the right side, you are brioche knitting, and if you are knitting on the wrong side, you are brioche purling. So I'm finishing this row number 4. The yarn stays in front because we were purling, and here it is. You can see it. It's 2-color brioche stockinette stitch. So you have all the stitches are knit stitches, no purl stitches like with the brioche rib. Here's the back. And if you want to do the pattern in stockinette, not in brioche rib, I'm going to show you on the example of fish scales pattern that I did in my other video. And I'm gonna just knit one row to show you that it's the same thing. So the pattern says that we have to slip on yarn over, brioche knit 3 columns. So we brioche knit. Since in stockinette we only have brioche knit columns, I am calling brioche knit columns the brioche knit stitches in color 1. So if you are doing like me, you're casting on in color 1, you're gonna have the same, you're gonna know that color 1 brioche knit stitches are the same as the one that you casted on. So brioche knit stitch, slip on yarn over, brioche knit 2, slip on yarn over, brioche knit 3, slip on yarn over. After that we have to do a left slant decrease, and we do it as usual, just like we did like this. Just knit 1 or just knit 2 brioche stitches together, and then pass over the first slipped stitch that we need, slipped knitwise, and then slip on yarn over, and then do the increase, slip on yarn over, and slip the last edge stitch with yarn in front. So you can see that all the instructions that I give you in my videos apply to the stockinette stitch. And there's another difference. In row number 2, after the increased stitches, it's gonna change a little bit. Since we are knitting this row, brioche knitting, not brioche purling, we're gonna knit that stitch in between the slip stitches. We're gonna get there and we're gonna see. So now we're knitting row number 2. We just brioche knit all the stitches with the color 2 yarn, and when we get to those increased stitches, if it would have been the brioche rib pattern, we would have done slip on yarn over, purl 1 stitch, and then slip on yarn over. And since we are knitting in stockinette, we are slipping 1 yarn over and then knit 1 and then slip on yarn over. So the difference is that we knit instead of purling, because this is gonna be a knit column, not a purl one. And then we continue brioche knit and slip the last stitch purlwise with yarn in the back.